Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I didn't think a joke could end a marriage. Not mine, at least. I always believed real damage came from betrayal, lies, screaming fights, not from one careless sentence said at the wrong moment. Looking back now, that belief feels naive. I'm Elizabeth, 39, married to James for 12 years. Or I was. I'm still adjusting to the silence he left behind. James was never the loud one. He wasn't flashy, wasn't charming in a room full of strangers. But he was steady, reliable, the kind of man who showed up early, fixed things without being asked, remembered small details no one else did. I used to tease him for being predictable. He used to smile and say, "Someone has to be." That was James. Solid, unmoving. Our life looked fine from the outside. A clean house, shared routines, weekend groceries, dinner around the same time every night. We didn't fight much. We also didn't talk deeply anymore. Somewhere along the way, conversations became logistics. Schedules, bills, who was picking up what. I noticed it, but I didn't name it. Naming things makes them real. At work, things were different. There was energy there, laughter, compliments, a sense of being seen. One of my co-workers, Mark, joked around a lot. Nothing serious. Harmless, I told myself. I laughed more than I should have. I noticed it, then ignored it. If you've ever brushed aside a small discomfort because facing it felt inconvenient, you understand exactly what I mean. One evening, we were having dinner with friends. Wine flowed more freely than usual. Conversation drifted from work stress to relationships. Someone teased James about being too serious. He smiled politely, like he always did. I felt the strange urge to lighten the mood, to sound witty, interesting. And that's when I said it. I joked that if James didn't loosen up, maybe I'd trade him in for someone with more personality. I laughed and added Mark's name, as if it made it obviously ridiculous. The table went quiet for half a second. Then someone laughed, and the moment passed. Or so I thought. If you're following this so far, please take a moment to like this video so stories like this can reach people who may recognize themselves in it. James didn't laugh. He didn't react at all. He finished his drink, thanked our friend for dinner, and drove us home in silence. I remember glancing at him, expecting irritation, maybe a sarcastic comment. There was nothing. His face was calm. Too calm. At home, I tried to joke again, to smooth it over. I said, "You know I was kidding, right?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "I know," he said. That was all. No argument. No raised voice. He went to bed early. I stayed up scrolling on my phone, telling myself I was overthinking. The next morning, James was already gone when I woke up. No note, no text. That was unusual, but not alarming. I went to work, distracted but functional. Around noon, I checked my phone. Still nothing. I sent a casual message asking if everything was okay. It stayed unread. By the time I got home that evening, the house felt different. Empty in a way I couldn't explain. His shoes were gone. His work bag, half his clothes. The garage was empty. James had taken his car. On the kitchen counter sat my wedding ring, carefully placed, centered, like it had been measured. At this point, I want you to comment below. Was what I said just a joke, or did it cross a line? I need to know how others see this. My chest tightened. I called him, straight to voicemail. I texted again. Nothing. Hours passed. Then days. No explanation. No confrontation. Just absence. I replayed that dinner over and over, analyzing tone, context, intention. I told myself any reasonable person would have talked it out. James was reasonable. That's what scared me most. If you've ever seen a moment like this quietly change everything, type the word silence in the comments. On the third day, I finally heard from him. One message. "I've moved out. Please don't contact me again. I need distance." That was it. No anger. No accusations. Just a boundary so clean it felt surgical. If this story is making you think of someone who needs to hear it, please share it thoughtfully. Some lessons are easier learned through someone else's pain. I sat on the couch that night, staring at the wall, realizing something too late. James didn't leave because of the joke. He left because it confirmed something he'd already been feeling. Something I had ignored. The days after James left blurred together. I went to work, answered emails, smiled at coworkers, and came home to a house that no longer felt like mine. His absence was louder than any argument we had never had. I kept expecting anger to arrive, something sharp I could push against, but all that came was reflection. And reflection is cruel when you've been avoiding it for years. A week later, a letter arrived, handwritten. James had always hated typing anything personal. That alone made my hands shake. He didn't accuse me. He didn't mention Mark by name. Instead, he wrote about erosion, about how slowly being taken for granted feels invisible while it's happening. He said the joke wasn't the wound, it was the proof. Proof that the respect he'd been quietly guarding was already gone. He wrote that he had spent years shrinking parts of himself so I could shine brighter, that he stopped sharing his thoughts because they were often met with indifference, that he learned to laugh quietly so he wouldn't be told he was boring. Reading that hurt more than any insult ever could, because it was honest, and honesty doesn't give you room to argue. I wanted to call him immediately, to explain, to say I never meant it. But halfway through dialing, I stopped, because meaning it or not didn't change the impact. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I had avoided for too long. Why had I needed that laugh? Why did validation from someone else feel easier than appreciation for the man who had never left my side? Over the following weeks, fragments of our marriage surfaced in ways I couldn't ignore. Moments when James tried to connect, and I dismissed him as tired. Times he made an effort, and I responded with distraction. I hadn't been cruel. I had been careless. And sometimes carelessness cuts deeper because it's wrapped in normalcy. I heard through a mutual friend that James was staying somewhere quiet, focusing on himself. He wasn't dating. He wasn't angry. That somehow made it worse. There was no villain version of him I could cling to, just a man who chose self-respect over familiarity. One evening, I ran into Mark after work. The interaction felt hollow immediately. Whatever spark I thought existed evaporated under the weight of reality. I realized something uncomfortable then. The joke wasn't about humor. It was about comparison. And comparison is poison in a relationship that's already thirsty. Months passed. Papers arrived. Clean. Efficient. No drama. James kept his distance, exactly as he said he would. When the divorce was finalized, I expected devastation. Instead, there was a quiet acceptance that surprised me. Loss doesn't always scream. Sometimes it teaches. I learned that love doesn't vanish suddenly. It fades when respect is chipped away without repair. I learned that jokes reveal more than intentions ever could. And I learned that silence, when chosen deliberately, is not weakness. It's clarity. On the last page of the paperwork, I paused longer than necessary. Not because I want to stop it, but because I finally understood it. James hadn't walked out impulsively. He had walked out consciously. And that difference matters. If you're still reading, understand this. The line between harmless and harmful isn't always obvious in the moment. It becomes clear only after consequences arrive. And by then, apologies often come too late. I don't tell this story to paint myself as a victim or him as a hero. I tell it because respect is quiet, fragile, and easily mistaken for permanence. And once it's gone, love doesn't usually stay behind to wait. James never looked back. And now I know why.